Hello and welcome back to Invincible Asia. I'm George Clark and this is another episode of the Invincible Asia podcast, where today I want to talk about my recent trip to Japan and Seoul, new releases for the month of June, Hong Kong legend John Woo, and maybe a wee bit more, but it really just depends how bored I get by the end of this. So after almost 4 weeks of travel around Japan, with visits to Seoul bookending either side, I finally made it home to a host of new arrivals and a lot of catching up to do. Now I'm not going to lie, I'm still exhausted and a little off track over 4 weeks later, but what a trip it was. It was our third time to Japan, although with some new sights and 2 extra bodies to tour around, but it was also our first time in Seoul and we really quite enjoyed it. The people were fantastic, the city was easy to get around, the food was great, and everything was reasonably priced. Now while I was there, I had the joy of visiting some of the locations for Kung Fu classics such as Jackie Chan's Dragon Fist and To Kill with Intrigue, Chin Soo-jung's Duel to the Death, Sammo Hung's Shaolin Plot, and also visited the actual church from When Taekwondo Strikes, which was actually just across the street from our hotel. Major thanks to Lee for helping me find these, it's greatly appreciated. You can actually check out his Now and Then location video on the new 88 Films 4K release of Dragon Fist and see some of the places that I did manage to visit. Of course, there are so many other films that were shot in these particular locations. I mean, so many, it's just ridiculous. But this is all I can pretty much figure out. Oh, one of which was a location from the incredible Korean miniseries Kingdom, which is available to watch on Netflix, and I highly recommend that you do. But to tread the steps of my hero, to see these palace locations that double for so many different places, Shaolin Temple or otherwise, it was just so incredible, and I really can't wait to get back for more. Now, of course, if you've caught my Instagram or any recent show and tell videos on my channel, you will know that I had the incredible opportunity to meet the legendary and amazing Hwang Jang Lee, Kung Fu supervillain of the 1970s and 80s, and star of many classics such as Jackie Chan's Snake in the Eagle's Shadow, Drunken Master, Secret Rivals, Dance of the Drunk Mantis, Tiger Overwall, his self-directed Hitman in the Hand of Buddha, Invincible Armor, Millionaire's Express, and so much more. It was actually one of the greatest moments of my life, I have to say, and just the joy to meet another hero of mine. Such a humble and incredibly pleasant man. He was just wonderful. So before we went to see him, I was lucky enough to pay a visit to the Korea Disco VHS store in Seoul, another wonderful place recommended by Lee, where I was over the moon to see so many VHS tapes, many of which were Hong Kong classics, and I had the chance to pick up a Hwang Jang Lee video called Emperor of the Underworld. Now along with that, I managed to get my hands on a rare and authentic Korean poster for his film Hard Bastard. Well, as we know it here in the UK, and it was so worth it because when we got to Hwang himself, he and his team were really surprised and impressed with what I had brought along, including a Japanese DVD of Drunken Master. Anyway, you can go and check out my full video on the channel of my visit to Hwang Jang Lee. I try not to get too excited and managed to salvage some footage that hadn't been drowned out with background noise, but please do check it out. So, on my flight to Seoul, we were offered a host of great in-flight movies and TV shows, everything from the latest Marvel movies to new release Korean blockbusters and even some Hong Kong titles. Now, of course, it was almost a 13-hour flight, so I did fit in quite a bit, but one movie that caught my interest was John Woo's remake of his classic film, The Killer, quite aptly named The Killer. Although they absolutely should have called it something else to try and give it its own identity, which may have helped critics and fans be a little kinder to it. Now, did I love it? No. Did I like it? Well, to some degree, but it's quite clear that Woo has lost his touch. I mean, ages ago. And that's why I thought it would be fun to go back through his career to really see what the hype was all about. Now, while I like John Woo, and I appreciate that he has given us some genuine classics of Hong Kong cinema, without a second thought, I still think he has had more flops than hits, and is one of the most overrated directors out there, delivering his best work between 1986 and 1992, or 1993 if you really have to count Hard Target, his Hollywood debut with Van Damme. Now, even today, after people have watched a Johnny To or Dante Lam film, for example, I often hear or read reviews where they say, "Oh, but they're no John Woo." Well, actually, you're right, because in my eyes, they're even better. And yes, they may have had, no doubt, been inspired by the masterworks of Woo at one point, but I just feel that they have been more consistent with their film projects, delivering one amazing movie after another, and rarely disappointing since the get-go. So, to lay it out flat, in less than a decade, John Woo had hit his peak with 6 major Hong Kong titles, such as A Better Tomorrow 1 and 2, The Killer, Bullet in the Head, Once a Thief, and the epic Hard Boil before heading off to Hollywood. Now, interestingly, he had co-directed Just Heroes with Wu Ma in between all that, and although it has never really been considered one of his finest, I do think that it's still pretty damn good. But for someone who is deemed to be the king of action movies, a pioneer, a major influence of gun fu and such, he actually hadn't directed too many action films before that. Now, of course, for those of you that didn't know, John Woo kicked off his career at the infamous Shaw Brothers Studios, working alongside the likes of Godfrey Ho and Wu Ma as an assistant director under leading directors such as Chang Jae and Pao Shu Lee on titles such as The Boxer from Shantung, The Water Margin, Four Riders, and The Blood Brothers, for example. Now, after leaving Shaw Brothers, Woo made his directorial debut over at Golden Harvest with The Young Dragons, a fairly decent kung fu drama that saw young Jackie Chan choreograph the action, and a host of future stars and directors that pop up throughout. Now, actually, the film was initially made under an independent name, but only gained distribution after Golden Harvest picked it up. It's good fun, and I do hope that Eureka release it on Blu-ray as one of their early Golden Harvest titles someday soon. Now, of course, it was a big enough hit for Raymond Chow to sign Woo up and give him a run of projects, and with that came The Dragon Tamers and The Hand of Death, a generic kung fu flick that has only really become bigger than it should have because of a certain Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung who appear in it. Now, over the years, he would go on to make mostly comedies for Golden Harvest. Some of these did have little moments of action throughout them, but movies such as The Pilferer's Progress, Follow the Star, Hello Late Homecomers, From Rags to Riches, and Laughing Times, a Charlie Chaplin-inspired comedy where Dean Sheck is literally called the Chinese or Oriental Charlie Chaplin, depending on which copy you see. Then there was To Hell with the Devil, Plain Jane to the Rescue, and Run Tiger Run, which I do think was his last for the studio. There was a couple of indies in between that, but for me, his best movie during his first decade was his epic wuxia Shaw Brothers homage, Last Hurrah for Chivalry. For me, this really showed what John Woo could do and highlighted the inspirations he had picked up from Chang Jae in his earlier years. Such an incredible movie. So it would be around the mid-1980s when Woo put his own production company together called John Woo Film Production Limited and set out to make something a bit different to what he had previously been offering. Of course, Hong Kong action cinema at this time was changing fast, and while traditional kung fu movies were still being made, stars such as Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung were making big changes, and John Woo was ready to join in the fun. So based on a script that he had written, Woo began work on his first heroic bloodshed modern action movie, a violent, war-torn piece by the name of The Sunset Warrior, which starred the great Eddie Ko. Playing like a low-budget Apocalypse Now set in Thailand and offering some violent action, the film was pretty much immediately shelved by Golden Harvest, with Woo stating that it was all over the place with its tone. Now, it was only after his success with A Better Tomorrow a couple of years later that Golden Harvest did a re-edit and finally released it under the title of Heroes Shed No Tears, a title actually used by Chow Yun for his Shaw Brothers film only 4 years earlier. Now, while it wasn't a huge hit during its initial cinema run in Hong Kong, the film has since went on to become a much-loved title of John Woo's filmography, as imperfect as it may be, but you could see the direction that he wanted to go, and it is worth checking out. Interestingly, during an interview in 2004, John Woo did state that he had never seen the film in its finished form. Crazy to think. So in 1986, the world was given one of Hong Kong cinema's most incredible titles, A Better Tomorrow, a box office smash that made John Woo a household name, along with one of its leading actors, the amazing Chow Yun-fat. In fact, this success would lead to one of the most cherished working relationships in the industry that would see both men go on to make another 4 movies together, with Woo directing obviously, most of which were those aforementioned big titles such as A Better Tomorrow 2, The Killer, Once a Thief and Hard Boiled. Now, in between all these amazing titles was one of my personal favourites, Bullet in the Head, initially set to be the third part of Woo's A Better Tomorrow series, a prequel in fact, but after a pretty big fallout with Choi Hark, he left Cinema City and reworked the script to become what it is today, while Choi Hark would go on to direct his own prequel, A Better Tomorrow 3, soon after that, and apparently rushed it out there to beat Bullet in the Head to the big screen. Now, rumour has it, at the same time, Choi Hark spread word that Woo was very difficult to work with, thus rendering him blacklisted by most funders and production companies. So, in turn, Woo had to fund Bullet in the Head out of his own pocket, and unfortunately, much like The Killer before that, it failed to light up the box office in Hong Kong, only taking in around 8.5 million Hong Kong dollars, which really wasn't a lot. I mean, even back then, compared to other releases, it wasn't a huge amount of money. Of course, after delivering the fun Once a Thief and his masterpiece Hard Boiled, which really solidified his name as a top action film director, Woo headed west where, like many, if not all, Hong Kong stars and directors, was put to work on a number of projects that gradually saw the decline of his true talent. Whether it was due to Hollywood studio pressure, restrictions, health and safety, and other crap like that, Hollywood John Woo gradually became a bit of a laughingstock, delivering films that felt like diluted versions of his best Hong Kong works, with his films quickly becoming just another Hollywood action film. Of course, Hard Target with Van Damme would be his Hollywood debut, and while it was pretty well received and is a firm fan favourite today, it was still hampered by studio pressure and restrictions that kept him back from delivering the film that he really wanted to. Interestingly, it would take another 3 years before we would see his next effort, which was Broken Arrow, a movie I personally hate. I think it's shit. I mean, it could have been directed by Michael Bay and you wouldn't know the difference. Compared to his lower budget Hong Kong action classics, this was piss poor. Now, that same year, Woo was convinced to direct a TV movie and his first remake of one of his better efforts, Once a Thief, this time featuring a little-known American-Canadian cast and lacking the excitement and fun of his original. Regardless though, the TV movie was well accepted and proved to be the pilot for a lengthy show that ran for a couple of years after, of which Woo and his new producing partner, Terence Chang, would gain credit for. Oh, and I must also point out that that same year again saw them both serve as the producers for Chow Yun-fat's Hollywood debut feature, The Replacement Killers. So a year after that, and again a movie I didn't really enjoy at all, Woo directed the highly regarded Face Off, starring Ridiculous Cage and John Travolta, who of course had starred for him in Broken Arrow. Now, while I feel this is a better movie than Broken Arrow, I still can't handle the piss-poor performances from its 2 main stars, and would love to have seen Woo bring in Chow Yun-fat as one of the main characters to really make this something special. But again, it was a big hit with the American audience. Now, strangely enough, and just the following year, Woo returned to television to direct Blackjack with Dolph Lundgren, another pilot intended to launch a TV series, but this time it was not meant to be because it was so poorly received. You know, if you were to lay John Woo's films and career out on a chart, it would probably start to look like one of the most exciting roller coasters because of the amount of ups and downs he has had over the years. But while Blackjack proved to be one of his action movie low points, Woo would then gain his Hollywood credit back soon after that when he was hired to direct the awesome Mission Impossible 2, for me, one of his best US efforts. Now, once again, this turn-of-the-century blockbuster put him back on the map, and really, how many times does he need to fall off? And soon, everyone was talking about John Woo once again. So while he was hot shit, his next big US project was handed to him almost immediately, a World War II epic called Wind Talkers that saw Ridiculous Cage come back for seconds and Broken Arrow's Christian Slater returned to co-star. Now, while it offered some great and massive action sequences, the film still seemed to lack something, although it still did okay at the box office. The following year though, Woo was back in familiar territory with Paycheck, a fun enough sci-fi action flick starring Ben Affleck and Uma Thurman, based on a story by Philip K. Dick, who had movies based on him before, like Total Recall, Minority Report, things like that. But again, the box office takings were just okay, and really the movie did fail to impress critics. Now, oddly, and once again, Woo was then hired to direct the pilot of a TV series, a reboot of a classic TV show, The Robinsons: Lost in Space, another failed production that never got picked up and, overall, disappeared from public view pretty much instantly. I mean, what the fuck? This is a prime example of how Hollywood studios handle foreign talent, especially Asian talent. They have no idea. For example, and as much as I criticize him, after all the great action films that Stanley Tong has directed in Hong Kong with Jackie Chan and others, the studios decide that his Hollywood debut should be the live-action adaptation of Mr. Magoo with Leslie Nielsen. I mean, what the actual fuck? Of course, it flopped miserably and he pretty much was sent home immediately. Now, I have this theory that Hollywood don't like foreign directors, again, especially Asian directors, and talent, that they would quicker try to set them up with a flop just to knock them down a peg or two, just to remind them that Hollywood are the best, even when they're not. Oh, don't get me started. Anyway, John Woo, lost in space, lost in the film industry more like it. Woo's flame was burning out fast, so since the turn of the century and his move to America, every film had kind of proved to be less and less Woo as the Hong Kong fans had known him, and it almost seemed that he was at the end of his career. So as a scramble to save his name as one of the world's best action film directors, Woo turned more and more to producing, lending his name to the likes of, say, the anime movie sequel, Appleseed, Ex Machina, and was brought in by Midway Studios to produce and direct Stranglehold starring Chow Yun-fat, a sequel to Hard Boiled made for a number of different gaming consoles. But hey, if there was ever a movie that John Woo and Chow Yun-fat should get back together again to adapt, it would be for Stranglehold. So around this time also, he produced a film called Blood Brothers with Daniel Wu, a fairly decent modern adaptation of Chang Cheh's film of the same name, but really a remake of Wu's very own Bullet in the Head to some degree. So perhaps finally realising that the grass isn't always greener on the other side, and that Hollywood quite possibly fucked up his film journey, considering what he could have made in Hong Kong during that time, John Woo headed back east in 2008 to deliver two of his finest movies in decades with the epic Red Cliff 1 and 2. Two movies I'll actually be unboxing this week on my channel with the special Japanese limited edition releases that I picked up on my latest trip. Now, of course, these were his first Chinese films since 1992, so it seemed that John Woo was back and ready to impress once again because they are quite epic movies. Now, soon after that, he produced and co-directed the brilliant and slightly forgotten Reign of Assassins with Michelle Yeoh, and when I say co-directed, you have to take that with a pinch of salt. I believe he was mostly acting as an advisor to director Su Chaopin, and the credit was given to him due to that. So yeah, I don't think he really co-directed it, so to speak. But this film would also see the acting debut of his own daughter, Angelise Wu, who would then go on to appear in pretty much all of his movies after this. So really, when you think about it, since 2009, we hadn't even seen John Woo at the helm for a good 5 years, although he did continue producing and lent his name to the two-part epic Warriors of the Rainbow in 2011. Then in 2014, we got The Crossing. Oh my god, I can't believe it's been over 10 years already. Another 4-hour epic split over two movies that has since been called The Chinese Titanic, and more so because it tells the true story of a steamer that was heading to Taiwan, which unfortunately sunk, killing 1,500 people on board. Now, although it had an all-star cast and opened in the #1 spot across China, the films were still considered a bit of a box office disappointment and were void of any action that the man was once known for. Now, interestingly, both films have still yet to have an official international release, which kind of says a lot. Then, a couple of years later, in 2017, Woo would return to the action fray with a remake of the 1976 Japanese thriller Manhunt, keeping the same name for his own film, of course. So this was shot in Osaka, and it featured the awesome Yasuaki Kurata, as well as a host of other Japanese greats, but I don't know, I like it, but I don't love it, and it's certainly no Hard-Boiled or The Killer, but it does have something there. Now, apparently he wanted to make it as a commemorative piece after the death of the great Ken Takakura, who was a big influence for Woo, and I do feel that it gets better and better with each watch, but it's still fairly poor in comparison to his finest films. Now, rumour has it that the distributors for mainland China recut the movie themselves for its release, as they considered his director's cut to be a huge, huge mess. So clearly Woo had been diluted by Hollywood and no doubt had the wind knocked out of him after so many disappointments. Up, down, hit, miss. Like I said, roller coaster. The man should never have left Hong Kong. Anyway, after Manhunt failed to excite audiences and win him the crown back that he wore so briefly in the late 80s and early 90s, Woo headed back to the West about 5 years after that, with the hope of relaunching himself once again in Hollywood, 20 years later. Now that film was Silent Night, an action thriller starring Joel Kinnaman, and an interesting and fun film without hardly any dialogue, if any, but it was a much more independent piece than his other big US studio films. Now, it's hardly one of his finest, but it clearly received enough positivity to kick his arse into gear to keep going without having another 5-year hiatus. Of course, this brings us back to his latest film and that remake of The Killer. Now, here's the thing. I've read some reviews that describe this film as a painting by numbers effort. Complete nonsense. Sleep-inducing. And one that simply asked why. And I totally get them all. Absolutely. In fact, I would have asked why myself. I mean, what was the bloody point? The references throughout are quite clear. Certain lines hark back to the original, and the action scenes, well, as much as they are highly modernised in comparison, they just didn't feel as brilliant as they did in the original movie. Now, for years, everyone has talked about remaking John Woo movies. And again, when I say that, I mean those 5 or 6 that really made his name. But no one has ever really done it except for the man himself. Sure, we had that 2010 Korean remake of A Better Tomorrow, which was actually pretty cool. But Woo himself was one of the executive producers on that. Then there was the 18 movie of the same name from director Ding Sheng, the director of Jackie Chan's Little Big Soldier, Police Story Lockdown and Railroad Tigers. Again, another fun ride, but that came and went as if it never existed, and I can't actually confirm if John Woo played a part in that or not. But The Killer, I mean, yeah, if you'd have told me that it was a pilot for a new TV show, I might have looked at it a little more positively. Like, apart from switching Hong Kong for Paris, Chow Yun-fat for a petite little girl, and Danny Lee's cop character for a fast-talking black Frenchman, who I actually really quite enjoyed, the film doesn't really offer anything new. It does offer many unintentional laughs due to its poor script, and it just confirms to me that John Woo, as much as I love him, really just got lucky between the years of 1986 and 1992 with that handful of movies that he made that are really still considered today to be pure and utter Hong Kong cinema gold. And I reiterate, there are better Hong Kong directors out there. Directors who have been consistent with their hits, successfully changing with the times, and constantly delivering one amazing movie after another. So, is John Woo overrated? Absolutely. Has he given us some incredible movies? Absolutely. But genuinely, over 30 years ago. How that same man can go on to deliver one bad movie after another from then is beyond me. But he keeps going, hoping that maybe one day he will find himself again and give us fans at least one more action film that is going to blow us away. So we're already into June and a host of new releases are already being announced. Shaw Brothers Classics Volume 7 from Shout Factory is one particular set that I cannot wait for. And then there was the amazing news that Arrow Video have made a deal with Shout Factory in gaining all 156 titles of the Golden Princess catalogue to release them here in the UK, including all of those aforementioned John Woo classics. Oh my god, now that won't be until 2026, but it's incredible news. Although, can us fans wait that long, or will we be giving Shout Factory all of our money first? Or both? I think I'll be doing both. Anyway, we'll talk more about that closer to the time, but for now, let's have a look at what's coming out here in the UK this coming month. So, from Eureka, we have the fantastic and underrated Hong Kong 1941, the brilliant wartime set action drama from director Lung Po Chi, the same man behind Jumping Ash, Banana Cop, The Island, and Fatal Love with Leslie Cheung. I really enjoy this film a lot. I had first seen it and owned it via the Hong Kong Legends DVD release many moons ago, and it stars the amazing Chow Yun-fat, Alex Mann, Cecilia Yip, Ku Feng, Wu Ma, and Stuart Ong in the villainous role. He does a fantastic job here. But I had the chance to check out this release last week, and I do highly recommend you get this for your collection. The Blu-ray is released as part of their Masters of Cinema series, and rightly so. It was produced by Sammo Hung and John Shum under the DMB banner, and there's also a wonderful amount of extras on there too, including a Hwang Jang audio commentary, interviews, video essays, and more. But overall, that new restored HD print is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, you'll never go back to your Hong Kong Legends DVD again. Now, at the same time, Eureka are also releasing their next set of Shaw Brothers movies, a double pact called Exact Revenge, featuring The Eunuch from director Teddy Yip and The Deadly Knives from director Jang Il-ho. Again, two great wuxia films from the early 70s, both with audio commentaries, Frank Jang on The Deadly Knives and Mike Leader and Arnav Enema on The Eunuch. And I know many of you feel that Eureka should have really just steered clear of the Shaw Brothers bandwagon, but hey, at least, you know what, they've been consistent enough with getting them out there, and they are giving us a lot more titles to add to our collections. And then, of course, 88 Films are hoping to pump out a whole dose of titles in the same week, or on the same day, I should really say, starting with Hideo Gosh's Gate of Flesh as part of their Japaniki label. Along with that, we have the 4K UHD and Blu-ray release of Jackie Chan's classic crime story, which I am super excited for, as well as the 4K UHD and Blu-ray release of Armor of God 2 Operation Condor. Yes, two Jackie Chans in one day. Both feature stunning new artwork from Sean Longmore, and both look set to impress. At the same time, supposedly, we finally get Chow Yun-fat's Witch from Nepal, directed by Tony Ching Soo-dung, a film that was beat to blue by Vinegar Syndrome, but I really can't wait for this release, to be honest. Now, that film comes with a new 2K restoration, a Frank Jang audio commentary, an interview with Tony Raines, and really not much else on top of that. But along with that, and considering I just went off on one about John Woo, they're also giving us a brand new edition of John Woo's Sunset Warriors. Yes, the original John Woo cut of his earliest action flick that was only ever originally released in Korea. So this gets a 2K remaster and a 2-disc release, with Heroes Shed No Tears on the second disc. There's a couple of audio commentaries on there, interviews and video essays that accompany it, along with trailers, etc. But I'm really excited for this. So yeah, quite a packed month of releases, if 88 Films can stick to schedule, and that's only from 2 labels. Anyway, I think I've went on enough, let's be honest. I'm not talking about Jackie Chan's new Karate Kid Legends though, because I'm only getting the chance to go and see that tonight, finally. But I can confirm that I am stupidly excited for it and really can't wait. So yes, that's a story for another time. As for now though, thank you for taking the time to listen to me drivel on once again, and thank you all for your continued support. It is greatly appreciated. This has been another Invincible Asia podcast. I'm George Clark, and until next time, enjoy your Kung Fu, and I'll see you soon. So thank you once again for watching another video here on Invincible Asia. Don't forget you can check out hundreds of others here on the channel. You can also show your continued support by heading over to my new merch store or by checking out invincibleasia.com, where you can read my full movie reviews and follow me on Instagram at InvincibleAsia. Until next time though, enjoy your Kung Fu and I will see you soon.